Alpha King Garron Elt arrived at Widow's Gate Inn with a confiscation order in one hand and enough soldiers to make refusal look foolish. Helena Dorrick stood beneath the carved stone wolves above the threshold and read the seal without taking the parchment from him. By pack law, the inn, its grain stores, its cellar, and every person sheltered inside now belonged to the crown. Royal Quartermaster Lucette Harrow announced the judgment from the road so the gathered villagers could hear it. Helena Dorrick has concealed enemy dependents, falsified guest ledgers, and obstructed military collection. Widow's Gate is hereby seized for royal use. No one in the crowd met Helena's eyes. Most had eaten at her tables during winter. Some had left parcels outside her kitchen after midnight, and never asked who received them. Now they watched the king's soldiers surround the inn as though silence could prove they had known nothing. Helena folded her hands over the iron keys at her waist. She wore a plain brown gown beneath a dark wool cloak. A thin white scar crossed the inside of her left wrist. Garron had seen it once during the border war, when he spent 3 nights at Widow's Gate while rain trapped his army in the valley. He had asked who hurt her. She had told him the storm had. He had known she was lying. He had not asked again. Now his gaze paused on the same wrist before returning to her face. "Move aside, Helena." His voice carried the authority of an Alpha King whose commands had ended rebellions. The soldiers behind him straightened, filling the road with the scent of wet fur, iron, and restrained aggression. Helena did not move. "You signed this?" Garron's jaw tightened. "I signed an emergency quartering order after Lucette presented evidence that this inn was sheltering people attached to hostile packs." Attached. Lucette stepped closer, silver account chains hanging from her dark uniform. Enemy wives. Runaway daughters. Contracted dependents removed from households that retain lawful claim over them. Helena looked toward the soldiers. "Do you hear how easily she makes people sound like missing blankets?" A murmur passed through the crowd. Lucette remained calm. "Pack law cannot function if every mate contract, family debt, and labor obligation ends at an innkeeper's door." Lucette added, "Guest. Right cannot dissolve lawful claim. Safety should. Safety is not yours to define." "No," Helena said. "It belongs to the person asking for it." Garron studied her with the expression he had worn years earlier beside her kitchen fire, when silence between them had felt like the only peaceful ground left in the kingdom. He had once slept above the stable with his sword against the wall and his wolf quiet for the first time in months. Widow's Gate had opened for him then. It had asked him no rank, no usefulness, no oath of repayment. It had given him a room because even kings sometimes arrived as hunted things. Today, the inn seemed to hold its breath. Widow's Gate did not open for pity. Old guest right law said its threshold remembered the reason a person crossed it. Shelter, seizure, refuge, return. Garron extended the confiscation order. "Under royal authority, the property is seized pending investigation. You will accompany the quartermaster and answer for the concealed occupants." Helena looked at the seal, then at him. "You are not investigating them. You are returning them." Lucette's eyes cooled. "Those lawfully claimed will be reassigned. To your supply camps. To service appropriate to their status." Helena knew what that meant. Laundry pits near military roads. Grain yards where women worked beneath guard. Names replaced by numbers attached to the households they had fled. She had built Widow's Gate so no one crossing its threshold had to explain the bruise beneath a sleeve, the severed mate cord, or why going home frightened them more than winter. Once, no door had opened for her. Her name had once been written under a household claim too. Not wife, not guest, not woman, dependent. She would not close this one for the crown. Garron lowered the parchment. Last warning. Helena stepped backward across the threshold. The stone wolves opened their eyes. Blue-white light entered the carved pupils above the door. Dust fell from their muzzles. A sound like claws dragging beneath the earth traveled through the road. The soldiers reached for their weapons. Lucette pointed at Helena. "Sanctuary sorcery. Arrest her." The first guard advanced. His boot touched the threshold. The 2 stone wolves dropped from the lintel. They landed without breaking, each as large as a warhorse, their moonstone bodies veined with silver. They did not stand beside Helena. They did not bow to her. They were not hers. They belonged to the threshold. Both turned toward the intention the soldiers carried. The guard tried to step forward. The threshold threw him back into the road. Not because he served the king. Because he had crossed to take back someone who had entered asking not to be returned. The wolves did not attack. They only witnessed the intention carried across the threshold. Every wolf in Garron's army snarled at once, then went silent. Garron approached the door alone. The moonstone wolves watched him. For one moment, Helena remembered him at her fire. Exhausted and unguarded. Then she saw the royal seizure order in his hand. He placed one boot on the worn oak threshold. Blue-white light flared. The door slammed shut between them. The threshold did not reject the crown. It rejected return. Behind Helena, bolts withdrew from the cellar floor. A hidden door opened beneath the common room, releasing lamplight, frightened breathing, and the sound of feet climbing toward the surface. Lucette stared past Helena into the inn. Garron remained outside the threshold of the one place that had once welcomed him. Then a woman rose from the cellar wearing a torn cloak fastened with the private silver clasp of Garron's royal house. The silver clasp was not decoration. It was a household claim seal. Garron knew that clasp. It was used only on dependents the royal house had no intention of losing. Widow's Gate had refused the king's order, but the silver clasp had brought his own house into the accusation. The woman stood beneath the common room lamps with one hand closed around the torn edge of her cloak. She was thin from travel, her dark hair unevenly cut, her face hollowed by weeks without proper sleep. The clasp at her throat remained unmistakable. A silver wolf beneath a broken crown. The private household mark of Elt. Garron stared through the open doorway. "Remove the hood." The woman flinched. Helena stepped between her and the road, not as a shield, but as the innkeeper responsible for the guests standing inside. "You may ask," she said. "You may not command her from beyond the threshold." Lucette moved beside Garron. "A royal dependent cannot claim guest right against the crown." Helena looked at her. "She entered as a guest before you named her property." The moonstone wolves remained beside the doorway, silent and unmoving. They did not threaten Lucette or Garron. Their blue-white eyes watched only the purpose carried toward the entrance. The woman slowly lowered her hood. Garron's wolf struck the inside of his ribs hard enough to steal his breath. "Sidon." His younger sister looked at him without relief. Princess Garron Elt had been missing for 8 months. The royal court claimed she had fled her mate contract, crossed into enemy territory, and died during a winter raid. Garron had ordered searches along the northern borders. He had stood before an empty funeral platform while Lucette's clerk sealed Garron's rooms. Yet she was alive inside Widow's Gate, and she looked at Garron as though his army were the danger she had expected to find. Lucette recovered first. Princess Garron was removed unlawfully from royal custody. Garron's fingers tightened around the clasp. "I walked out. You were under contract. I was under guard. The guard existed because you were politically valuable." Helena crossed to the long oak table near the hearth. A guest ledger rested there beneath a leather cover darkened by generations of hands. It contained no noble ranks, pack affiliations, or household valuations. Widow's Gate recorded only 3 things: the name offered by the guest, the hour of entry, and the reason the threshold had accepted the crossing. Lucette saw Helena reach for it. "That ledger contains royal evidence. It contains guest right." It became crown property the moment the confiscation order was signed. Garron looked at the parchment still in his hand. The order bore his signature. He had given Lucette the authority to seize the inn, its records, and the people within it. Whether he had understood who would be found here did not change what his command allowed. "Open the entry," he said. Lucette turned toward him. "Majesty, household claims are not subject to tavern inspection. You called her a dependent before the entire village. The claim is already part of your accusation." Helena opened the ledger. The pages moved without wind, not toward Helena's blood or touch. The book responded because someone recorded under guest right now stood before the threshold while another person attempted to assert ownership over her. Lines of pale silver appeared across the paper. Guest name offered, Garron. Garron's jaw tightened. No title. No royal house. Garron had entered Widow's Gate as a woman asking for a room. Helena placed 2 fingers beside the next line. "Read the reason for entry." Lucette stepped toward the doorway. The threshold wolves did not move. Her boot remained outside the worn oak strip. She looked down at the confiscation order in Garron's hand. then at the guest ledger beyond it. To cross now, she would have to enter carrying the intention to seize a named guest and the record protecting her. She stopped. The ledger continued. Reason for entry. Fleeing compulsory return. Lucettes' expression did not change. Guest reasons are not legal findings. Garron looked at Saren. What return? She met his eyes for the first time. The mate contract did not end when I escaped. His voice lowered. The court told me the contract was dissolved after your death was confirmed. They needed me dead on paper so no one would ask where they sent me. Lucettes' expression remained controlled. The princess was transferred for her own protection after displaying instability. Saren laughed once, without humor. I refused to share a chamber with a man who locked the doors from the outside. The contract joined 2 military houses. A contract is not consent. Lucette turned to Garron. Your sister's personal fear could not be permitted to fracture a border alliance. Helena's gaze hardened. A claim is not a person. The guest ledger opened another page. A strip of silver parchment emerged from its spine, carrying the same broken crown wolf mark as Saren's clasp. Household claim entered. Royal dependent classified. Mate contract preserved. Return authorized. Garron recognized the structure of the document. Such orders came from the private household office, not the open royal court. They allowed a royal dependent to be recovered without public arrest, formal accusation, or council review. He had approved the office years earlier. He had allowed his seal to be used there. Who signed the return? He asked. Lucette held out her hand. Household documents must be surrendered. Helena kept the ledger open. No. You are obstructing royal custody. I am preserving the reason a guest crossed. Lucette's voice sharpened. That record concerns the king's sister. It concerned a frightened woman before you admitted whose sister she was. The silver parchment unfolded across the table. Garron saw the return route first. Saren was to be taken from any inn, shrine, healer's house, or neutral road shelter, and delivered directly to a military supply station under quartermaster authority. Not the palace. Not her family. Lucette's camp. His wolf pressed against his skin. You were authorized to hold her? Lucette did not answer the question directly. The camps provided secure transit. Saren's face went still. They provided locked wagons. The final section of the return order began to glow. Garron stepped nearer to the threshold, but did not attempt to cross. The wolves watched the purpose behind his movement. This time he carried no immediate command to seize Saren. Only the need to see what his house had done in his name. The signature appeared. It was not Garron's handwriting. That did not free him. It only narrowed the crime to the office he had built, and the seal he had allowed others to use. Beneath the signature, pressed deep into the silver parchment, was the private seal that never left his household office. The seal only Garron, his chamberlain, and the royal quartermaster were authorized to use. Seal custody at time of return. Royal quartermaster chain. The return order did not lead Saren home. It led through the royal quartermaster's chain. The silver parchment remained open across Widow's Gate's oak table, while the seal custody line burned beneath it. Outside, Garron ordered his soldiers away from the entrance, back to the lower road. Lucette turned sharply. Majesty, withdrawing the cordon will allow evidence to leave. I did not withdraw the confiscation order. Helena heard the distinction. He had moved the army away from the guest right threshold, but the royal claim over the inn remained. Garron was preserving the inquiry without yet undoing the command that endangered everyone inside. That was restraint. It was not repair. The soldiers retreated far enough that the moonstone wolves became still shapes beside the door again. Their work at the threshold was finished. The next question belonged to the records laid across the table. Lucette faced the open ledger through the doorway. Seal custody proves only which office carried the chain. It does not prove misuse. Helena placed her bandaged fingertip beside the return route entry. Then let it read where the chain was taking her. Guest. Right has no jurisdiction over military transit. It has jurisdiction over why she arrived. The destination is irrelevant to the validity of the household claim. Saren's voice came quietly from beside the hearth. It was relevant when they locked the wagon. Garron looked at his sister. She did not offer him more. No long account of the journey. No plea for belief. Only the fact Lucette's language had attempted to remove. Locked. Helena turned the silver parchment toward the guest ledger. The book did not obey her. Its pages remained still until Saren stepped forward and placed the household clasp beside the name she had offered when she entered. The broken crown wolf mark touched the paper. A pale line appeared. It began at the royal household office, crossed 3 pack roads, and passed nowhere near the palace. Garron watched it bend south. Where does that road end? Lucette answered before the record could. Temporary quartermaster lodging. The line continued. Military supply station 6. The silver route line darkened into the shape of a grain wagon, iron rings gleaming inside its walls. Saren's fingers tightened against the edge of the table. That is where they changed the carriage. Garron's expression hardened. Changed it for what? A grain wagon. Lucette remained composed. Discreet transport protects politically sensitive dependents from public attention. There were iron rings inside it, Saren said. The guest ledger added another entry. Transfer method? Secured wagon. Destination class. Dependent holding station. Palace return. Not scheduled. Garron read the final line twice. The order carrying his private seal had never intended to return his sister to the royal household. It had moved her into Lucette's military supply system. Helena looked toward him through the open doorway. You did not lose your sister to enemy territory. You lost her to a law office with your seal. His golden brown eyes met hers. I did not write that order. The seal was not your handwriting, Helena said. It was your permission-made metal. Garron did not deny it. He had created the private household office after the border war, when public hearings delayed marriages, inheritance transfers, and ward placements. He had wanted a faster system for royal emergencies. He had allowed 3 offices to speak with his authority. Now one of those offices had created a road along which a royal woman could disappear without ever being publicly arrested. Read the Chamberlain release, Garron said. Lucette's account chains gave a faint metallic sound as she shifted. The Chamberlain acted under emergency household protocol. Was he present when the seal was released? His office authorized the transfer. That was not my question. Lucette's face remained calm. In wartime administration, an office may continue acting when its holder is unavailable. Helena looked down at the silver parchment. Unavailable is another word that makes a person disappear. Lucette ignored her. Household transfer records are sealed from public challenge. Without that protection, every family decision involving a frightened daughter or unstable mate could become village theater. Saren looked at her. You declared me dead. To prevent rival packs from exploiting your disappearance. You preserved the contract after declaring me dead. The alliance required continuity. A dead woman cannot consent. Lucette's eyes did not leave Garron. Consent was not the legal question. The guest ledger darkened along its spine. It could read the reason a guest crossed. It could compare that reason against the claim used to retrieve her. But it could not simply open every sealed royal office because Helena asked. The household record needed a point of contradiction. Garron supplied it. My chamberlain was removed from palace duty 6 days before Saren's return order. Lucette's stillness sharpened. Helena looked at him. Removed by whom? Quartermaster security. I was told he had compromised military accounts. The seal record opened another layer. Chamberlain access suspended. Private seal retained under emergency custody. Household releases continued. Garron's jaw tightened. You retained my seal after removing the only officer assigned to witness its use. Lucette answered without hesitation. The kingdom could not stop functioning because one chamberlain was under investigation. Where is he now? Missing. Saren looked toward the silver route line. Since before they came for me? Lucette did not answer. The ledger did. Chamberlain last recorded. 3 nights before return authorization. Location. Quartermaster Supply Station 6. Departure, unrecorded. The same station where Saren had been sent. Garron's wolf pressed close beneath his skin, but he gave no command to free everyone. Reopen the inn, or absolve himself. His confiscation order still lay in his hand. His authority had created the office. His seal had traveled through it. His soldiers had come to reclaim the people it classified. Lucette lifted her chin. A missing chamberlain does not invalidate a lawful transfer. He was still the witness assigned to my seal, Garron said. He remained subject to wartime authority. Helena turned the silver parchment over. The return order carried a second set of marks beneath the route numbers connected to transport, rations, guards, and labor assignment. Not household law. Accounts. Lucette moved toward the threshold before stopping herself. Those marks are military property. Helena did not touch them. She looked at Saren. Do you want the ledger to read what they assigned you? Saren's face lost what little color remained. Then she nodded. The account marks opened. Transfer release funded. Secured wagon authorized. Dependent labor value entered. A final silver chain appeared beneath the lines. Transfer release funded through account. Royal Quartermaster, Lucette Harrow. Saren had not been returned as a sister, a princess, or a wife. The ledger had priced her as labor. The words remained open across the silver parchment. Dependent labor value entered. Garron read them from beyond the threshold, his confiscation order hanging at his side. What does that category authorize? Lucette Harrow answered without looking at Saren. It is an accounting classification. Royal dependents transferred through military custody require food, guards, transport, and secure lodging. Their value is entered so the Crown can recover those costs. You assigned my sister a recoverable value. I assigned the transfer an account. Helena stood beside the guest ledger. A claim could wear a crown seal and still be a cage. Lucette's eyes narrowed. You are an innkeeper interpreting military finance. I know the difference between sheltering a guest and pricing what happens to her body after she leaves. Saren placed the silver household clasp against the labor value line. The ledger did not open the receiving assignment. Pale light moved beneath the page, then stopped. Helena did not force it. Guestright can read where she was being taken because she entered fleeing that road, she said. It cannot open the agreement waiting at the end unless the claim and the receiving account contradict each other. Garron looked toward Lucette. What did the household claim say? That the princess was being returned to lawful royal custody, and the route ended at a supply station. A temporary station. Palace return was not scheduled. Lucette's voice remained measured. Because the border alliance required discretion. Saren looked at her brother. That is what they called the locked wagon too. Garron's fingers tightened around the confiscation order. He had signed it believing Widow's Gate concealed enemy dependents. He now knew the same language had been used to hide his sister inside Lucette's supply system. Not knowing the destination did not erase the authority he had provided. Stay the seizure order, he told the captain at the lower road. No guest, record, or property leaves Widow's Gate until these accounts are secured. Lucette turned toward him. You suspend Crown authority based on a sanctuary ledger? I suspend an order I signed before the evidence beneath it was shown to me. He placed the parchment on the road outside the threshold. The moonstone wolves did not move. Garron stepped across the worn oak strip without carrying an order to seize, return, or possess anyone inside. Widow's Gate allowed him to enter. Helena watched him come into the common room where he had once slept as a hunted king. She did not mistake admission for forgiveness. He had changed the purpose of this crossing. He had not answered for the first one. Garron stopped across the table from Saren. Read the receiving assignment. Lucette remained outside. Military accounts cannot be exposed through guest right. They contain active supply routes, alliance obligations, and troop vulnerabilities. Garron did not look away from the parchment. Then surrender your account chains for royal preservation. They are bound to my office. The office is under inquiry. That inquiry began inside a confiscated inn run by a woman concealing a royal dependent. Helena Dorrick has committed treason whether the transfer was properly funded or not. Helena Methergaze. You brought seizure across a guest right door and found the king's sister hiding from your wagon. Call me what keeps your accounts closed. Lucette removed neither chain nor key. Garron addressed the guards outside. No one touches her yet, but no quartermaster account leaves this road. He had suspended Lucette's access without declaring her guilty. Arresting her before the receiving record opened would allow every camp officer beneath her to destroy connected accounts and call the inquiry royal panic. Lucette understood the calculation. So you keep me standing before villagers while a widow turns sealed finance into theater? No, Garron said. I keep you where your account cannot disappear. Saren pressed her palm beside the labor value entry. I consent to the receiving record being read. The silver parchment warmed. A new section opened beneath the transfer cost. Dependent assignment entered. Labor category. Household service. Compliance status. Unwilling. Value application. Alliance recovery. Saren stared at the word unwilling. They recorded that? Lucette answered from the road. Refusal affects guard requirements. It did not affect whether you sent me. The contract had already been ratified. Helena looked at the next line. Who was meant to receive her value? The page resisted again. A black witness mark crossed the assignment. Garron recognized the Chamberlain's office sign. He witnessed this section. Lucette's expression hardened slightly. He refused to complete it. The record opened around the contradiction. Witness objection entered. Receiving assignment disputed. Consent absent. Transfer release refused. Saren drew a breath. He tried to stop it. Garron read the date. 3 nights before the return authorization. The same night his Chamberlain was last recorded at Supply Station 6. Lucette spoke before he could ask. He exceeded his office. Household witnesses confirm seals and lineage. They do not overrule a ratified mate contract. What happened after he refused? He was removed for compromising an active alliance. Removed where? Into Quartermaster Review. The ledger added one final Chamberlain entry. Witness transferred to Station 6 holding archive. Release record. None. He had not vanished from the palace. He had vanished from the record after reaching the same station chosen for Saren. Garron looked toward Lucette. Preserve every account connected to Station 6. You risk grain deliveries to 4 armies. I risk discovering how many people became supplies inside your ledgers. Helena turned the receiving page. A wolf-shaped account seal appeared beneath the Chamberlain's unfinished objection. It was not Lucette's personal mark. It belonged to the military house whose border alliance depended upon Saren's mate contract. The assignment lines completed themselves. Receiving household. House Morcant. Value credited against. Border alliance obligation. Designated beneficiary. Lord Corwin Morcant. Lord Corwin Morcant's name made Garron understand why Saren had been declared dead. A living princess could refuse a mate contract. A dead royal dependent could be processed through alliance law without ever appearing before the court again. Saren stood beside the guest ledger while House Morcant's wolf seal darkened across the silver parchment. Garron looked at her. Corwin was the man named in your contract. He was the house named in it, Saren said. The man was only how they expected me to enter. Lucette remained outside Widow's Gate, her silver account chain still bound across her uniform. House Morcant controls the Eastern Grain Road and 3 winter garrisons. The contract secured border stability after 2 years of raids. Garron's gaze hardened. I approved the alliance. Helena did not let the admission pass as virtue. You approved the road that made her useful. I believed she had accepted the match. Saren looked toward him. You asked me whether I understood what the kingdom needed. You never asked whether I wanted the man. The common room went quiet. Garron remembered the signing chamber. Saren standing beneath royal banners. Corwin Morcant smiling beside her. The council speaking of grain, soldiers, and bloodlines. Saren had said very little. He had mistaken silence for obedience because obedience made the alliance easier to complete. Lucette spoke from beyond the door. Royal marriages are not private preferences. Helena turned toward her. Neither is fear. Once you build a kingdom around ignoring it. The ledger opened another section beneath the receiving assignment. Alliance covenant entered. Eastern grain obligation reduced. Military escort granted. Royal dependent pledged as household surety. Garron's wolf shifted beneath his skin. Household surety, Lucette answered evenly. A guarantee that the royal house would not withdraw from the agreement after Morcant committed resources. You pledged my sister as proof of payment. The contract pledged royal continuity. Saren touched the line with one finger. Silver light spread across the page. Surety condition. Dependent must remain accessible to receiving house. Flight classified as alliance default. Recovery costs. Helena looked at Garron. She did not flee a marriage. She fled a debt written around her body. A political covenant cannot survive if one party may leave without consequence, Lucette said. A person is not a party when everyone else writes the terms. Garron removed his narrow royal ring and placed it beside the covenant seal. The ring carried no power over Widow's Gate. It only proved that the authority opening the alliance record belonged to the same crown that had ratified it. Read the recovery clause. Lucette's expression sharpened. That clause concerns active border defense. It concerns why Saren was sent to Station 6. The Covenant resisted. Unlike the guest ledger, it had been written to preserve obligation, not intention. The silver page would not open simply because the king demanded it. Saren placed her household clasp against Garron's ring. "I was the surety," she said. "Let it read what my return was meant to restore." The record opened. Default recovery entered. Royal dependent transferred to Morcant custody. Labor value credited until contract compliance. Public royal status suspended. Garron stared at the third line. Until contract compliance. Lucette lifted her chin. The labor designation was temporary. Once the princess fulfilled the covenant, her royal status would be restored. Saren's voice remained quiet. "You were going to make me work until I agreed to marry him." Household service would have demonstrated good faith. Helena's hand closed around the iron keys at her waist. A cage does not become temporary because the door opens after surrender. The ledger shifted again. A small visual mark formed above the labor value entry. A grain yard enclosed by timber walls. Women moving beneath watchtowers. Silver claim tags fastened at their throats. Not a memory. An assignment design. The destination House Morcant had prepared for Saren. Saren stepped back from the table. "I saw those tags at Station 6. Garron looked at her. "On whom?" She did not answer immediately. "Women from the wagons. Some wore pack cords. Some carried children. The guards called them enemy dependents." Lucette's voice cut across the room. "This inquiry concerns one royal transfer." Helena turned toward her. "No. It concerns the category you used to make that transfer ordinary. The ledger would not open the other names. They were not guests presently challenging claims at Widow's Gate, and Helena could not command their records into view. But one line beneath Saren's assignment connected House Morcant's grain ward to the quartermaster network. Supply labor allocation authorized. Dependents supplied by Station 6. Quota credited to Eastern Alliance. Garron's face changed. Saren had not been the only person moving along that road. She had been the most politically valuable one. Lucette remained composed. Captured dependents and displaced households have always supported military supply during war. "Captured?" Helena asked. "Or returned?" Lucette did not answer. Garron looked at the confiscation order lying outside on the road. He had signed it because Lucette claimed Helena concealed enemy dependents. If Widow's Gate surrendered its guests, the order would place them inside the same supply chain now open beneath Saren's name. He turned to the captain below the hill. "Send riders to seal Station 6's gates. No wagon enters or leaves. No account is burned." Lucette's voice hardened. "You cannot freeze an eastern supply station without starving soldiers. I can stop a station from moving people while its grain continues under guard. You do not know what you are dismantling. I know what I authorized without looking." The answer did not clear him. It placed the failure where it belonged. Garron had approved the alliance, created the private household office, delegated his seal, and signed the order threatening Widow's Gate. Lucette had used each permission exactly where secrecy made it most profitable. Helena watched him issue the command. Once, she had wanted someone powerful to stand between her and the household claim written over her name. No one had. She would not confuse a late order with the protection he should have offered Saren sooner. The House Morcant Covenant opened one final line. Receiving benefit upon successful recovery. Permanent control of the Eastern Sanctuary roads. The Eastern road marks spread across the Covenant like a net, and Widow's Gate sat at its first knot. Silver lines crossed grain routes, forest passes, shrine roads, and narrow bridges that did not appear on the royal military maps. Some ended at villages. Others disappeared beneath old guest right symbols carved before the pacts divided the kingdom. Helena recognized 3 of them. She did not look at the rest. Lucette Harrow noticed. Those roads are unregistered. They are old. Old roads can still carry enemies. They carry people who cannot use pack roads without being returned. Lucette stood beyond the threshold, her account chains held under royal guard, which is precisely why House Morcant requested authority over them. No kingdom can permit private inns to create borders inside royal territory. Helena kept her hands away from the map. Widow's Gate is not a border. It refuses lawful officers. It refuses the reason they arrive. Garron studied the branching routes. Why would Saren's recovery grant Morcant permanent control over sanctuary roads? Lucette answered as though the wording were ordinary. The Eastern Alliance required a security concession. House Morcant supplied grain and soldiers. The Crown supplied authority to close escape corridors used by hostile dependents. Escape corridors, Helena repeated. Your preferred language does not change their function. No, yours does. Saren moved beside the table, keeping distance between herself and Garron. At Station 6, they asked the women which roads they had taken. Garron turned toward her. Who asked? Quartermaster clerks. They wanted inns, shrines, widows' houses, healer cottages. Anything that gave a bed without sending notice to a household. Lucette's expression remained composed. Military stations gather route intelligence. They withheld food until people named places, Saren said. The room went still. Garron did not ask her to describe more. He looked at the silver network spreading across the Covenant. The seizure order for Widow's Gate included the guest ledger. Lucette inclined her head. Naturally. And Helena? She obstructed the recovery of royal and enemy dependents. Helena looked at the folded confiscation order outside on the road. Garron had signed it before riding here. He had not merely authorized soldiers to take an inn. He had authorized Lucette to seize the one person who understood how frightened travelers moved between safe thresholds without entering pack custody. Bring me the order, he told the captain. The captain retrieved the parchment but stopped before the door. Garron crossed back outside to take it. Widow's Gate allowed him to leave. When he returned, he carried the order open, not as an instrument of seizure, but as evidence under review. The threshold admitted him again. Lucette watched closely. You cannot make a confiscation order harmless by changing how you hold it. No, Garron said, but I can read what I signed. He placed it beside the Morcant Covenant. The first page named Helena, the inn, its cellar, stores, and guest records. The language was severe but familiar. The second page carried smaller clauses hidden beneath Quartermaster Collection Authority. Garron pressed his royal ring beside the seal. Open the operational purpose. Lucette's voice sharpened. That section contains protected military intelligence. It was protected from me when I signed it. You delegated implementation. I delegated action, not concealment. The royal seal warmed. Lines surfaced beneath the confiscation terms. Property recovery authorized. Guest records secured. Innkeeper transferred for route examination. Eastern refuge paths identified for Alliance enforcement. Helena read the third line without moving. Transferred. Not questioned at Widow's Gate. Not heard before a pack court. Transferred into the same quartermaster system that had carried Saren towards Station 6. Garron looked at Lucette. You intended to take Helena to a supply station. She possesses strategic route knowledge. She is an innkeeper. She is the center of an illegal sanctuary network. Helena finally looked at the silver roads. Not the center. Lucette's eyes narrowed. It was the first admission Helena had made. Not because she trusted Garron, because the Covenant had already placed several paths in danger. And denying every connection would allow Lucette to describe them without challenge. Garron heard the distinction. How many? Helena met his gaze. That is not a question a king carrying a confiscation order gets to ask. The words struck between them. Years earlier, Garron had arrived during the war soaked with rain and blood, his wolf too restless to sleep among soldiers. Helena had given him the room above the stable and never asked where his army would march at dawn. She had accepted his need for shelter without turning it into intelligence. Now the office carrying his seal had come to force the same knowledge from her. Lucette stepped closer to the threshold but did not cross. Her refusal confirms treason. No, Helena said. It confirms that a sanctuary road dies the moment it becomes a royal list. Then every hidden inn is beyond law. Every guest is still answerable for what they do after leaving. They are not required to be dragged back to whoever frightened them. Lucette turned to Garron. If you permit this, wives will abandon mate contracts. Daughters will vanish from blood obligations. Debt households will lose labor. And every rival pack will hide agents beneath claims of fear. Helena's voice stayed low. You keep naming the cost to households. Never the cost to the person trapped inside one. Garron looked down at his signature. He had signed the order because Lucette said the inn sheltered enemy dependents. He had not asked why a quartermaster needed the innkeeper transferred rather than questioned before a magistrate. He had given urgency more authority than scrutiny. "Strike the transfer clause," he said. Lucette's face hardened. "You cannot amend an executed seizure while the subject still obstructs the crown. I can suspend its use. And the roads? They remain unentered until a public hearing determines whether the crown has any right to claim them." Helena did not thank him. A hearing could still expose names, routes, and shelters. Public procedure was safer than Lucette's camps, but safety was not the same as control remaining with those who needed it. The confiscation order opened one final hidden attachment. Lucette moved for the first time without calculation. "Seal that page." Garron placed his hand over the royal mark before she could invoke quartermaster privilege. The attachment unfolded. It contained no map, only a target classification. Route intelligence source. Helena Dorrick. Extraction method. Household dependency reinstatement. Helena's breath stopped. Her former household claim had not died when she escaped her husband. Lucette had found it and intended to use it to make the keeper of Widow's Gate legally returnable. The moment Helena's old household mark surfaced, the confiscation order stopped being about an inn. A faded wolf seal appeared beneath her name, not the mark of Widow's Gate, the mark of the household she had escaped. Lucette Harrow stood outside the common room with her account chains held under guard, but her voice remained calm. Widowhood does not automatically dissolve an unreleased dependency. Garron looked from the seal to Helena. "Her husband is dead. Her departure occurred before his death," Lucette said. "She left without household consent, refused lawful return, and never completed widow release before a pack magistrate." Helena's fingers tightened around the iron keys at her waist. "You mean I did not return to the house I had escaped long enough to ask it for permission to remain gone?" Lucette did not flinch. "Pack law requires succession clarity. A dependent who abandons a household may still carry its obligations after the claimant dies." Garron's face hardened. "What obligations?" The attachment opened. Original classification: spouse dependent. Departure status: unauthorized. Household safety petition denied. Return order issued. Widow release withheld. The common room became silent. Helena did not look at the villagers outside. Some had known her for years. None had seen the petition that came before Widow's Gate. Garron read the third line. "You requested protection." Helena looked at him. "I requested permission to sleep behind a door he could not open." The scar inside her wrist seemed brighter beneath the lamplight. Years earlier, Garron had seen it while sitting beside her kitchen fire. He had asked who hurt her. She had answered with a lie, and he had accepted it because her silence made the room easier for him to rest inside. Widow's Gate had given him peace. He had never asked what Helena had survived to build it. Lucette spoke before guilt could become action. The petition was reviewed under the law of its time. No independent witness confirmed immediate mortal danger. Helena gave a small, empty laugh. "My husband dismissed the servants before he locked the room. The magistrate said a wound without a witness was a household disagreement." The old record opened another line. "Petitioner ordered to resume marital residence." Garron's wolf pressed beneath his skin. "And when she refused?" "Her household recorded loss of labor, unpaid obligations, and breach of mate duty. A mate contract is not ownership." Lucette's gaze moved toward Saren. "The crown has relied upon household continuity for generations. You cannot discard every claim because its dependent later describes fear." Helena stepped toward the table. "No. You discard the claim because the person inside it asked to leave." She placed her own palm beside the old seal. The guest ledger did not wake. This was not a guest record. It was Helena's household file, attached to the royal order that named her as root intelligence. Widow's Gate could not invalidate it for her. The threshold remembered why people crossed. It did not rewrite the laws waiting outside. Lucette saw that limitation and pressed it. Helena Dorrick remains legally attached to the Dorrick estate. The estate carries outstanding supply debts. Those debts permit the quartermaster to assume recovery authority over dependent labor. Saren stared at her. "You could not break guest. Right, so you made the innkeeper returnable." Lucette's expression remained controlled. "I applied an existing claim." Helena looked down at the seal bearing the name she had kept after her husband's death. She had kept Dorrick because changing it required a pack court, and the court that denied her safety still controlled the petition. Widow's Gate knew her by the name she offered. Pack law knew her by the household that once owned her labor. The attachment continued. Claim holder, Dorrick Estate. Outstanding obligation. Military supply debt. Dependency value assigned as collateral. Recovery authority, Royal Quartermaster. A person reduced to an asset line. Again, Garron turned toward Lucette. You intended to transfer Helena to Station 6. I intended to question her under lawful recovery authority. In a secured wagon? If necessary. Helena met Garron's eyes. Your order would have taken my inn, my guests, my ledger, and then me. I did not know this clause was attached. No, she said. You only signed where Lucette told you urgency lived. The words landed harder because they were true. Garron had not designed Helena's first return order. He had not denied her safety petition. But the law had survived beneath his crown. His private household office had strengthened the machinery that allowed claims to move without public hearings. Then he had signed the confiscation order that brought it to Widow's Gate. Every execution under this attachment is suspended, he said. Lucette's eyes sharpened. You cannot suspend debt recovery across the Eastern Pax because one innkeeper objects to her classification. I am suspending this claim, and leaving the sanctuary network in the hands of a woman legally required to surrender herself for examination? Helena turned the attachment toward the villagers beyond the doorway. She could have covered the old petition. She could have allowed Garron to argue procedure while protecting the details of what had happened to her. Instead, she lifted the page. My claim is the evidence. Several villagers lowered their eyes. Not from disgust. From recognition. Helena's voice remained steady. This is how a woman becomes returnable. First, fear is called private. Then leaving is called breach. Then the household writes a debt around the empty place where she stood. Lucette's account chains gave a faint metallic sound. You expose sealed household history to undermine pack law. I expose what pack law required me to survive. Garron looked at the old return order, the denied safety petition, and the new confiscation attachment. Who reinstated the dependency? Lucette answered carefully. The claim was dormant until a lawful trigger reactivated recovery. What trigger? The final line appeared beneath Helena's classification. Lucette had not forged Garron's name. She had not needed to. Reinstatement trigger? Royal seizure order signed by Alpha King Garron Elt. Garron's signature had not merely seized Widow's Gate. It had reopened the law Helena once escaped. The reinstatement line remained visible beneath the confiscation seal. Royal seizure order signed. Dormant dependency reactivated. Recovery authority restored. Helena looked at Garron across the guest table. You brought my old household back to life with one order. He did not reach for the parchment. I signed it. Lucette Harrow stood beyond the threshold, still guarded but unbowed. And because he signed it, the claim is lawful. The quartermaster did not invent Helena Dorrick's dependency. The crown merely restored an obligation she abandoned. Helena's voice stayed level. I abandoned a locked room. You abandoned a recognized household. A household that petitioned to have me returned after I asked not to be hurt. Lucette turned toward Garron. If you void this order because the subject dislikes its consequences, every seizure in the Eastern Pax becomes contestable. Garron looked down at his name. That is not the reason I am voiding it. The room went still. Lucette's account chains tightened against her uniform as she straightened. You cannot revoke an executed royal seizure while evidence remains concealed beneath the property. The order was executed under a false classification. You have not disproved enemy dependence. Helena stepped away from the table. No, she said. But I can show you what your classification was built to hide. She crossed the common room toward the cellar door. Saren moved after her. Helena. The single word carried warning. Opening the cellar would expose more than frightened people. It would expose the routes, relationships, and trust that had kept Widow's Gate alive. Some guests had arrived under names their families did not know. Others had crossed pack lines while royal patrols searched for them. Helena rested one hand on the cellar key. For years, secrecy had protected the sanctuary. Now Lucette was using that secrecy to call every hidden person an enemy asset. Helena turned toward those waiting below. I will not name anyone who does not choose to come up. No answer came at first. Then a woman's voice rose from the dark. Will they take us? Helena looked at Garron. He stood beside the order that had authorized exactly that. Not while I still hold command, he said. Helena's gaze hardened. That is not enough. He understood. Protection, depending on one king's mood, was only another form of permission. Garron removed his royal seal from the confiscation order. The parchment resisted. Red wax stretched between the metal and the page, holding the force of the command. He broke it. The seizure lines dimmed. Lucette stepped forward. The inn remains under crown review. Garron faced the villagers gathered outside. Widow's Gate is no longer under seizure. No guest will be removed under household return, mate contract, family debt, or quartermaster classification until those claims are heard in open court. Lucette's voice sharpened. You suspend pack law at the request of one widow. No. I suspend a process that prevented the accused from ever reaching a court. The reinstated dependency mark beneath Helena's name cracked. It did not vanish. Garron's revocation stopped Lucette from using it today. It did not erase the law that had made Helena returnable. Helena unlocked the cellar. The hidden door rose slowly from the floor. She stepped down first. When she returned, she was not leading a procession of grateful witnesses. She was walking beside them. 7 women came up. 2 carried sleeping children. 1 wore the remnants of a northern pack cord. Another still had a metal supply tag hanging from her belt, its number scratched almost smooth. An older woman held a boy's hand and kept her face turned away from the soldiers. They did not kneel to Garron. They did not thank Helena. They stood behind the guest table because Helena had offered them the choice to be seen. Lucette looked over them. Enemy dependents, exactly as charged. Helena opened the ledger to a blank page. No names unless they offer them. The woman with the supply tag stepped forward. Mara. Silver ink formed. Guest name offered. Mara. Helena did not touch the next line. Mara placed the tag beside it. Reason for entry. Fled Station 6 labor ward. Lucette gave a cold breath. A labor ward is not a prison. Mara held up the tag. They took my name off the ration list and replaced it with this number. Another woman stepped forward. Aylin. Reason for entry. Returned twice to violent household. A third offered no name at all. The ledger accepted that too. Guest name offered. None. Reason for entry. Child threatened under mate debt. The villagers outside no longer looked away. Lucette spoke over the silence. Unverified claims. Private fear. No legal findings. Helena closed the ledger before it could become spectacle. They did not come up to satisfy you. Then they prove nothing. They prove why your order needed the cellar closed before anyone could choose to speak. Garron looked at the women behind Helena. His confiscation order had called them enemy dependents without hearing a single reason for entry. His soldiers had arrived prepared to return them to households and camps because Lucette's categories made removal appear administrative. He turned to his captain. Every return order connected to Station 6 is frozen. Send copies to the royal court and summon pack magistrates from outside Lucette's supply jurisdiction. Lucette's composure finally showed strain, though not confession. You expose military labor records during an active border season. Grain will stop. Garrisons will fail. Then we will learn whether the kingdom's food was being carried by people it had no right to hold. Helena watched him issue the order. He had revoked the seizure. He had not earned entry into her trust. That would require more than breaking one's seal after using it. Lucette lifted her chin toward the witnesses. By revealing this network, Helena Dorrick has admitted coordinated interference with lawful household recovery. Helena faced the road. Yes. Saren looked at her. Garron went still. Lucette's eyes sharpened. Helena continued. I opened the cellar. I gave them rooms. I sent wagons along roads your clerks could not see. She placed the iron keys on the guest table. If you intend to charge someone for building the sanctuary, charge me in public. The threshold wolves remained stone. They did not defend her. They witnessed the reason she had stepped forward. And when Lucette demanded Helena's arrest for treason, the villagers finally heard what the crown was being asked to punish. Not an enemy network, but a woman who had made leaving possible. Lucette's demand for Helena's arrest forced the conflict out of the cellar and into the open court. By midday, the yard before Widow's Gate held 3 pack magistrates. Garron's senior captains, House Morcant's eastern envoy, and enough villagers to prevent any sealed judgment from disappearing into a royal office. Helena stood beneath the inn sign without chains. Lucette stood opposite her beneath guard, still wearing the silver account cords of the royal quartermaster. The envoy from House Morcant unrolled the border covenant. Helena Dorrick has admitted obstructing household recovery, concealing contracted dependents, and transporting royal property through unauthorized sanctuary roads. The Eastern Alliance requires her surrender. People are not royal property, Helena said. The envoy did not look at her. Without the recovery of pledged dependents, House Morcant will suspend grain deliveries to 4 garrisons. A low disturbance moved through Garron's officers. Lucette had built her defense carefully. She did not deny the camps, the wagons, or the labor values. She made them appear necessary. Border armies cannot be sustained by sentiment, she said. Every crown relies on obligations. Household labor, mate contracts, debt service, and dependent transfers are part of the structure feeding those armies. Helena looked toward the women who had chosen to leave the cellar. You fed the armies by making departure illegal. I preserved the kingdom through war. You preserved the accounts that made frightened people cheaper than paid workers. Lucette faced the magistrates. An innkeeper cannot overrule pack law because she dislikes how duty feels. Garron placed the broken confiscation seal on the judgment table. She is not overruling it. She is showing what the law permitted my office to do without review. The Morcant envoy's expression cooled. You would weaken the crown publicly for a widow who built an illegal network? Garron did not look toward Helena when he answered. I weakened it when I signed authority I had not examined. That admission did not pardon him. Helena knew the distance between recognizing harm and surrendering the power that caused it. One of the magistrates opened Lucette's preserved accounts. The pages had arrived from Station 6 under armed guard. Lucette's clerks had attempted to remove several transport lists, but the account chains left impressions where the pages had been cut. The first surviving sheet carried labor numbers, not names. Widows, daughters, contracted mates. Children old enough to work grain lines, all entered by household value and recovery cost. Garron's chamberlain appeared on the final page. Witness objection recorded. Dependent transfers challenged. Account seizure attempted. Witness confined under quartermaster authority. He is alive? Garron asked. A captain stepped forward. Found in the Station 6 archive room. Weak, but alive. He confirmed that he refused to witness Princess Saren's transfer after seeing the labor assignments. Lucette's expression remained controlled. A suspended chamberlain protecting a disobedient princess is not an impartial witness. No, Helena said. But he is the reason you made him disappear. Lucette looked at her sharply. I removed an officer who threatened wartime supply security. You imprisoned the witness assigned to Garron Seal. The magistrate turned another page. The ledger revealed Lucette's method without requiring her confession. Runaways were classified as enemy dependents. Household return orders moved them into quartermaster custody. Their labor values were credited against military debts. Packhouses received grain reductions, road access, or political favors in exchange for accepting assigned workers. House Morcant had been promised permanent control of the eastern sanctuary routes because those routes interfered with the supply of recoverable dependents. The envoy rolled the covenant closed. Whatever excesses occurred at Station 6, the alliance remains binding. Saren stepped beside Helena. A contract written without consent cannot bind my body. It binds the royal house. Garron looked at his sister, then at the soldiers who depended on Morcant grain, then at Helena, standing before the inn he had tried to seize. His final choice would not be measured by whether he protected one woman from Lucette. It would be measured by what authority he was willing to surrender afterward. He removed the private household seal from his belt. This office is dissolved. Lucette's composure broke only in the smallest tightening of her mouth. The captain stared at Garron. He placed the seal on the stone and crushed it beneath his boot. No royal dependent will be transferred through sealed household process again. Every return order will require the named person to be heard before an independent magistrate. The Morcant envoy stepped forward. Then House Morcant withdraws its grain. So be it. 4 garrisons could face shortage. Rival packs could test the eastern border. Garron did not pretend the cost was small. We will pay free workers. We will open crown reserves. I will sell royal hunting lands before I purchase another winter with forced labor. Lucette's voice sharpened. You would endanger thousands because a handful of dependents object to duty. Helena faced her. They did not object to duty. They objected to being owned. Garron turned to the magistrates. Charge Lucette Harrow with unlawful confinement. falsification of dependent status, misuse of the private royal seal, forced labor allocation, and concealment of witnesses. Lucette did not confess. She lifted her chin as the guards removed her account chains. The kingdom will discover that mercy does not move grain. Helena answered quietly. Neither did mercy build your camps. People did. The judgment table still held Helena's old household claim. A magistrate reached for it. Helena stopped him. Do not pardon only me. Garron looked at her. If you erase my claim as an exception, another woman will still need a king to believe her before she may leave. The crowd fell silent. What do you require? He asked. Widow's Gate must stand outside pack ownership. Any person may enter under guest, right without permission from mate, husband, parent, creditor, or household. No return claim crosses its threshold without the guest's consent and an open hearing. The magistrates exchanged uneasy looks. Such a law would alter every household claim in the kingdom. Garron's answer came without turning the request into a gift. Write it. By sunset, the first neutral sanctuary charter was nailed beside the door of Widow's Gate. Helena's old dependency mark was not privately forgiven. It was made unenforceable by a law that recognized her right to leave. And when Garron approached the threshold after the judgment, he carried no order, no claim, and no expectation that the inn would welcome him back. The new sanctuary charter changed the road before it changed Helena's heart. For 3 weeks, royal carpenters repaired the damaged gatehouse, while paid workers replaced the forced labor removed from Station 6. Crown grain stores opened under public account. Garron sold 2 royal hunting estates to keep the eastern garrisons supplied after House Morcant withdrew its wagons. The shortages were real. So were the wages. For the first time, the names beside the grain totals belonged to people free to leave the yards at sunset. Lucette Harrow went to trial without confession. She argued that every transfer, labor credit, and sealed return had preserved military stability. The court convicted her through records, witnesses, and the chamberlain she had confined not through repentance she never offered. House Morcant lost control of the eastern sanctuary roads. Lord Corwin's mate contract with Saren was declared unenforceable because she had never consented before an independent witness. Saren did not remain at the palace. She rented a room near Widow's Gate. Art began copying disputed household claims for the new sanctuary court. She did not ask Garron's permission. He did not offer it. Helena kept the iron keys. The crown offered her a noble title, a royal salary, and authority over every refuge inn in the kingdom. She refused the title and accepted only enough funding to keep the roads supplied without allowing the palace to control their guest ledgers. Widow's Gate belonged to no pack. Its guests could offer a name or none. No husband, mate, parent, creditor, or king could retrieve someone across the threshold without consent and an open hearing. The threshold wolves remained carved above the door. They were not Helena's guardians. They did not punish the guilty or bless the innocent. They remembered why a person crossed. Garron came to the inn after the first winter snow. He arrived without soldiers. No royal banner marked his horse. No command seal hung from his belt. He wore a dark traveling cloak over plain armor and stopped several feet from the threshold. Helena was stacking firewood beneath the covered porch. You still stand outside as though the door owes you an answer, she said. It does not. His voice held none of the force he once brought with the confiscation order. He looked toward the moonstone wolves, then back to her. I came to ask for a room. Helena set down the wood. Why? The question was not ceremonial. Widow's Gate did not accept rank in place of reason. Garron understood. The Eastern Council meets tomorrow. House Morcant has challenged the sanctuary charter, and 3 alphas want the private household office restored under another name. You have a palace. I do. Then why come here? Snow gathered in his black hair. Because every room in that palace was built to tell me I am right before I speak. Helena watched him carefully. Years earlier, he had arrived during war exhausted enough to accept quiet without trying to own it. She had given him shelter and believed, for a few nights, that his restraint revealed the man beneath the crown. Later, he signed an order that turned her sanctuary into property and her old fear into a legal chain. One honest answer could not erase that. Garron did not pretend it could. I need one night in a place where my authority cannot enter before I do, he said. If the answer is no, I will leave. The threshold wolves remained still. Helena looked at his empty hands. No order? No. No request for the guest ledger? No. No promise that you will protect this place if it becomes useful to you? His jaw tightened. I do not have the right to promise ownership disguised as protection. That answer reached deeper than apology. Helena stepped aside. The threshold did not open because Garron was king. It did not open because Helena forgave him. He crossed, carrying the intention he had named. Shelter without possession. Blue-white light moved briefly through the carved wolf's eyes, then faded. Inside, Garron stopped beside the long oak table. The broken confiscation seal hung above the hearth, mounted beneath the sanctuary charter. Helena had kept it there so no guest would mistake the new law for kindness granted freely by the crown. Garron looked at it. You should have destroyed that. No. Why keep it? Because revoked power still needs a witness. He nodded. Helena gave him the same room above the stable he had used during the war. Not her private chamber. Not a place beside her. A guest room. That night, they sat near the kitchen fire after the others slept. Garron did not ask about the scar on her wrist again. This time, Helena told him without being pressed. She spoke of the petition denied, the room locked, the magistrate who called fear a household disagreement, and the night she walked until Widow's Gate admitted her. Garron listened. He did not interrupt with guilt or promises. When she finished, he said, I benefited from a law that taught men like your husband they could call possession order. Yes. And I used that law against you even after I knew what this place had once given me. Yes. I cannot ask you to make that smaller. No. The fire settled between them. Months passed before Garron returned without official business. Longer still before Helena allowed him to help repair the weathered porch. He never received a key to the guest ledger. He never claimed Widow's Gate as part of his crown. When Helena finally placed one iron key in his palm, it opened only the outer wood store. Do not mistake this for trust completed, she said. I will not. It is work. Then I will do the work. The kingdom remembered Widow's Gate as the place where an Alpha King's army was locked outside. Helena remembered something harder. It became the place where a king learned that love could not cross a threshold carrying ownership and chose to return without it.